What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. What is it about the Steven Avery case that we simply can't get enough of? And what is it about this particular crime that has so ingrained itself into the zeitgeist of America that we simply can't let it go? Back in 2015 when the original series debuted, it really took the world by storm. People were absolutely riveted by the story of Steve Avery and how it intertwined with Teresa Halbach. And what could have easily been dismissed as just another expose into a horrible crime in America, easily morphed into one of the most disturbingly gut-wrenching and complex cases in the history of jurisprudence. Now, for those of you who are new to Netflix or perhaps haven't gotten around to seeing the first season of Making a Murderer, I'm not going to do a recap here because I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I do recommend that you watch it right now. The original documentary is only about 10 episodes, but it's 10 of the most engrossing episodes you will see on Netflix to date. So this is my official review of Making a Murderer Part 2, let's take a closer look. Now, just like with any high-profile case, especially in this one, there are going to be polarizing opposites, people who think that Steve Avery is completely innocent, and those who think he's absolutely guilty of the crime of murdering Teresa Halbach. Now, I have to admit I'm guilty of something. In Season 2, at least the first couple of episodes, I thought they were kind of dragging on and moving slow, and I quickly had to check myself and think, hey, this is not entertainment, these are actual people's lives. In the first couple of episodes, what they were doing is really going into the aftermath of what happened to Steven Avery, especially if you've already seen Season 1, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think that was a necessary thing. I don't think people want to come away with this as entertainment. They do want to understand that these are human lives, and regardless of how you feel about either side of this case, there are humans that are being adversely affected in a very negative way. And then, of course, after a few episodes, we're finally introduced into a larger-than-life attorney named Kathleen Zellner. Kathleen Zellner, for all intents and purposes, really has steered the Steve Avery case in a different direction. She's been an American attorney for several years, most notably working almost exclusively on those who have been wrongfully convicted. Not only does she present us with an alternate theory, and a pretty credible one at that, of who may have had a hand in actually killing Teresa Halbach, but she, very surgically, starts to begin to poke holes into the prosecution's case at the forensic level, and it is absolutely fascinating. But she simply doesn't stop there, and she takes it to a whole nother level. If you thought there was some malfeasance going on with the prosecution's case in Season 1, Zellner really exposes a lot of corruption and some things that haven't been answered. This documentary really takes a dark turn, and I mean a dark one, very quickly. Now, I'll be the first to admit, and one of the criticisms I do have about this documentary is that at times it seems incredibly one-sided, but that's only because those key players on the prosecution side refuse to participate in the documentary. But I also have to admit that Kathleen Zellner is not merely being hyperbolic, and she's got a lot of credible evidence to back up some of her conclusions, especially her alternate theory of the crime. What's also very fascinating about Season 2 of this documentary is that there is another parallel case going on, and it has to do with Steven Avery's nephew, then 16-year-old Brendan Dassey. Taking up the charge for Dassey in this respect is Laura Nereeder, who's the co-director of the Center of Wrongful Convictions of Youth at the Northwestern Pinker School of Law. Nereeder, along with her partner, assert that the conviction or the confession of Dassey was unconstitutional as it was leading or coerced by the police. The Dassey aspect of this documentary is really the criminal justice system at its best or at its worst, depending on how you look at it. Now, one of the aspects of this documentary that I found incredibly fascinating were the arguments that were presented to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Those arguments were absolutely riveting and gives us a remarkable insight into how these decisions are made at the appellate level, as well as the politics of murder and how it can have a remarkably disturbing influence on the outcome of those decisions. Sadly, and I don't know quite how to feel about this, but Making a Murderer Season 2 really raises a lot more questions than it answers. I think the second part of this documentary really sets a different tone and wants to remind us that these are not just stories that are for the purposes of entertainment on Netflix. These are lives on both sides of the families that have been adversely affected by this horrible crime. Closing out the 10th episode in Season 2 entitled Trust No One, I came to the sobering realization that I still have absolutely no idea exactly what happened to Teresa Halbach. And I think that's one of the most tragic aspects of this entire god-awful mess. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on Making a Murderer Part 2. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.